Hello, thank you for everyone coming along. Just realised I just put it down and put it back up. So I really appreciate everyone taking the time to come out west for our journal club this afternoon. Yes, Jan, I can see you taking a photo right now. It's the first GambleAware week journal club without Chris on for a very long time. So, you know, it's a little bit different for those who work with Chris. I sort of just took over, but I'm going to try my best today. A few housekeeping things. I wasn't formally told where the emergency exit is, but I feel like just go through those things. There's also an exit. So if you need the toilets, they're outside, turn left. If you want tea, coffee, water, you can get the water there. The tea, coffee stuff, head down to the back. There's boiling water. Please throw all your rubbish in that bin, or just makes it easier at the end. We plan to present for about an hour and a bit first. We've got Viv now in place of Maria. We're going to pause the Viv for stepping up. We're going to make it But we're followed by Jackie. You raise your hand, and then we'll have Sarah as well, and then afterwards we'll be doing a bit of other stuffing. We've got some topics ready to go, but along the way, if you've got your own questions in mind, just record them, and then we can use that as part of the panel. We'll have about a 15-minute break for our morning tea. Absolutely smashes. There's plenty of food. It looks really lovely. And I've also asked that if you can turn your phones to silent or off for the presentation. I must say, I was at a communication event last Thursday. It was in Richmond, and it was the seniors weekly catch-up. So everyone there was like over 80 years of age, and it was honestly the most attentive people I've ever presented to, because none of them had phones. Like the whole time they're just sitting there, they're just looking at you, they're so do your best not to look at your phone or understand what happens, so please just take a step away if you do need to. Otherwise, thank you for everyone here. Is there anything that I missed, do you think? Jackie, Pops? No? Doing well, thank you. So I'll hand over to Viv. All right, no problem. Thank you very much. Get started.
Hi everyone. Brilliant. So thank you, I'm Sheridan for today. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the Dori people of the Eora Nation in the city and pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. This always was, always will be Aboriginal land. And whenever I acknowledge country in my role, I do like to add that our Aboriginal families and communities are disproportionately harmed both by gambling and investing. So this will not be a surprise to most people in the room, but gambling in Australia is very acceptable, very normalised. You can see on the screen here about 72.8, 73% of adult Australians participate in gambling. In the middle there, about 33% have pokies, and then down towards the bottom we can see forms of gambling that are supposed to be illegal, but then of course practiced. And online gambling dramatically in recent years increasing as well. So, I'm changing it on the laptop and not the screen, sorry. When something's really normalised and really socialised and really oversaturated, like with gambling, it can be hard to know when we've tipped the scale from recreational into harmful. So we've identified two major ways, and that is one, spending more time than you can afford relative to your obligations, work, familial, etc. And two, spending more money than you can afford in relation to your income. So it's important to identify, first of all, what harm looks like, and then secondly, to highlight that for every high-risk gambler, an estimated 6 other people are affected. And we're talking about domestic violence and the intersection between gambling and domestic violence today. I think it's especially pertinent to highlight that. Okay. So this is a table from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and it demonstrates women's reported experiences of domestic violence from 2021 to 2022. And we can see here that economic abuse is really high. So as many as 1 in 6 women experience economic abuse by their partners, And that's a really important thing, again, to keep in mind when we're looking at the interplay between gambling and DV, because gambling is a financial behaviour. This is from the 2021 to 2022 Personal Safety Survey. So this survey shows the prevalence of reported domestic violence, and over this period, it's been broken down into whether or not the household experienced cash flow problems. So the Personal Safety Survey asked about cash flow problems experienced in the last 12 months in the household, and they identified cash flow problems as not being able to pay bills and amenities, not being able to pay rent and mortgage, not being able to pay for car rego or insurance, and not being able to make minimum payments on credit cards, and then having to pawn or sell something because they needed cash, having to go without meals or having to go without heating or cooling to the home, and having to seek financial assistance, whether that be from friends, family, or welfare associations. So those were the categories that they examined. You can see there that households that did have cash flow problems, significantly higher levels of financial stress and domestic violence than those that didn't. Cool. So what are the overlaps between gambling and DV? So first of all, they're both gendered issues. So it would be remiss not to say that more men participate in gambling than women, and domestic violence is overwhelmingly perpetrated by men to women. Studies have consistently shown higher rates of DV perpetration among people who engage in problem gambling. And this also shows that gambling interacts with the gender drivers of violence against women to exacerbate violence against women. And women may experience verbal, emotional, physical, or sexual violence to force her into providing money, signing loan documents, sometimes even falsifying information to obtain loans. And violence can also be used as a tool to silence criticisms of gambling expenditure or debts incurred as a result of gambling. A few more things. So men's control of decision-making of the household and the finances can impede on women's independence and particularly increase their economic dependence on their male partners and hinder their ability to lead the relationship. And for some women who experience really severe or extreme financial deprivation due to their partner's gambling, they might be lacking money for necessities, not being able to provide for children, utilities disconnected, loss of assets, high debts, etc. And harms from gambling, including domestic violence, is important to highlight, and not just confined to really high-risk gamblers, but also people with low or moderate gambling problems. Okay, so these quotes are taken from a 2021 collaborative study. These quotes are taken from a 2021 collaborative study, which explored how problem gambling interacts with gendered drivers of violence against women to intensify the frequency and the severity of that violence within the relationship. So the female participants in this study are quoted here. They all were women with lived experiences of domestic violence perpetrated by a male partner with a gambling problem. So why I've taken these quotes is I wanted to map them out to the cycle of violence. I'm sure everyone will be familiar with the cycle of violence that we talk about in DV cycle indication. So we've got the tension building phase, and the quote there, he would get nervous and moody as tension built towards a gambling session. The incident, if he lost a race, his anger would escalate, it was my fault. He would apologize, he was sort of walking on eggshells, so we've got the reconciliation period. A bad day of losses for him is a bad day of losses for us. And he could never see that he was spending the shopping money to win the shopping money. And then, of course, the gambling was so interwoven with the violence, it was inseparable. And we see things like this, particularly around, the NRL Grand Final, the AFL Grand Final, those peak football season days where hospitalizations from DV, something like tenfold, I can't remember the statistic, but basically through the roof. And then, of course, you've got things like drug and alcohol use, all that stuff interacting and exacerbating the violence and the gambling at the same time. So some recommendations for practice for anyone working with that intersection between gambling and DV is to screen for gambling and DV during intake and assessment processes in a meaningful way. So not just tick a box, you gamble, no, cool, moving on. Be really empathetic when you're asking these questions, non-judgmental. being alert to the co-occurrence, so just being aware that these two things overlap a lot, and where DB is identified, to make sure that we're responding appropriately. So using the appropriate screening tools, responding calmly to disclosures, making a safety plan, looking at where you can escalate if you can't make a safety plan around the DB, and follow mandatory reporting guidelines, of course, and keep checking in. So if the client expresses a lack of need at the moment, be open to postponing the conversation at a later date, as long as there's no immediate safety risk. And just remembering that women are the experts of their own lives when it comes to this. Financial institutions can also assist with this, both for gambling and DB, and that should say case study or client story. So I'm going to talk about one of my clients now, SK. So she's a 32-year-old married mother of two. And I've already given this case study today. Everyone is hearing it for the second time today. So she relocated from Bangladesh to Australia from her husband's work. She has two children, one is school age and one is in primary school. She was observed by staff at her local community centre, displaying low mood and anxiety, body language, bruising around the eyes. Sleep deprivation was actually very obvious in her immediate physical presentation. And she disclosed to the staff there that her husband was a problem gambler and that they were experiencing some severe financial stress. So she was referred to GambleAware. Our intake team, different mood up there. Our intake team identified DB immediately. So she was actually having friends, calling friends in secret, off the secret phone, and getting them to drop food around the back of the house, and she was spending money, getting them to like drop bottles of milk, things like that. So for SK, it was so severe that the kids actually were not being fed, was the level. Her husband was taking her pay packet, putting it all straight down the phone. He wasn't working at the time. The circumstances have thankfully changed in the past month. But so of course we immediately made a child protection report before she was even in clinic. She had a face-to-face appointment with me 48 hours later, which was awesome. We were able to do a bit of safety planning and work with DCJ. We were able to get family functional therapy in the home twice a week, visiting mum and dad. In some situations that can escalate violence. Luckily for this family, when perpetrator had eyes on them twice in the house, the behaviour massively went down. Particularly for her, it was a lot of psychological abuse, a lot of putting her down, of course, financial coercion, taking her money from her. She wasn't aware of the Australian systems, and unfortunately, there was also in this case, which does happen from time to time, there was what we would call misidentification of victim. So basically, the ADBO was on SK, my client, to protect her partner. The perpetrator was a protected person. So we were even able to liaise with WD and the police for that and get the, we can forget the title, but the cold designated worker within the police force who actually told me, yeah, you know, this is all trying to follow women, unfortunately, because maybe there's not a good language skills or whatnot. And they were able to get the ADO essentially turned around the way it was meant to be, with conditions so that they could still live under the same roof. Yeah, for her, I think the big intervention as opposed to being, you know, there was some gambling psychoeducation to understand what was going on with her partner. But for her, the big thing was actually DB psychoeducation. So because A, she had grown up in the context of DB herself, and B, because I think cultural considerations and all that sort of stuff, she wasn't actually recognizing it as DB at all. So a lot of my work with her was DB psychoeducation and helping her understand the cycle of violence and what legal protections she has living in Australia, and what legal obligations we have as well to keep her safe. So that was really positive. We built a safety plan around the DB. She was experiencing suicidality as well, just because of this essentially lifelong DB that she experienced first with her family's origin and then later with her husband. So we did some suicide safety plans in place as well initially, but that's not really an issue, sorry, for her anymore, which is really positive. So yeah, we're in a much better place now. Her husband is also still engaged with our service, but at a different clinic with a different clinician, obviously, and doesn't know that she. So this is a very, I guess, good news story in a way. We're able to do a lot. We're able to put a lot of support and interventions in place for SK and the family. So that's what I'm going to share today.
So I don't have any initial questions directly for them now. Before we move on. Yes, Paul.
I just have a question about, I don't know, like, Vivian, you do like in your experience or, probably have there been cases where it's not so much the female partner who's being restrained by the partner's family, but where domestic violence that resulted in, what are the feelings about?
I just got a question for the people online. The question was about when gambling, when the person gambling is sort of seeking it out, sort of what's happening at home.
Yeah, let me tell you, I have another one of my clients who's experiencing domestic violence in her home at the moment. It's a bit of an ongoing practice case. And yes, there is examples. It's obviously a smaller cohort, but I've made up this case because it's basically an example. So she is experiencing active domestic violence at home. Her son, her adult son, is a perpetrator. There's a lot of mental health, psychosocial stress and happening at home. And basically, her way of dealing with it, because he works seasonally, so he's home a lot, is to get out of the house. And what she used to do is go to the movies, and she would just watch 3 movies a day. And she would just sit there. He couldn't find her. She could distract herself, and that's what she wanted: distraction, safety. She can't afford it anymore. Their financial situation has changed. The irony that she's now gambling, but anyway. So what she started doing was going to the club instead. And the same study that I quoted up there, that collaborative study with the quotes, they also did a smaller cohort of qualitative studies where they interviewed women who were gamblers who started gambling as a result of the violence that was happening at home, and basically mirrored everything that this current client has told me, which is that it's somewhere that I could go that had heating in the winter and aircon in the summer. I'm essentially left alone. I'm a pensioner. I can spend $4 on a coffee and nothing else. People are kind to me. People are social to me. It's a safe space, and it's a perfect escape from him. And after, an initial assessment with her, I basically said, I don't think you have a gambling problem, you have a domestic violence problem. So yeah, thank you for that question. I think that is a cohort, absolutely. It's a smaller cohort, but yeah, where women are gambling, particularly in the over 65 age group, that is definitely a cause.
Thank you, Viv. Again, appreciate the short notice. So welcome, Jackie. I was just going to have to set up a few PowerPoints. Remember?
Hi everyone, my name is Jackie. I am from the local health district. Thank you for inviting me to come and chat to you guys today. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past and present and any Aboriginal colleagues we have with us in the room today. My title is Safer Pathway Senior Clinician. What that means in quite simple language is I am the health rep for the safety action meetings. I will talk to you guys about what safety action meeting is today, because a lot of people haven't heard of them. They're a government initiative, and I'll do a bit of a deeper dive into them. The other part of my role is to support health clinicians when they are working with either the victim, survivor experiencing the violence, or the perpetrator using the violence. And to guide them on their work to make sure that we are being victim focused and holding perpetrators accountable. Working with perpetrators is a really tricky space, and we need to make sure that we're really skilled when we're doing that, so that we're not making victim survivors more unsafe. And so it is a really tricky thing, and health are trying to work it out. We aren't perfect at it, and a lot of it is us trying to upskill and learn and teach practitioners about how to do that properly. But I do just want to acknowledge that at the start. I also want to acknowledge, as Viv has already mentioned, that through my chat today, I do generally call victim survivors she, her, Reason because we know that domestic violence is a gendered issue. It's not to say that men aren't victims. We do see male victims. When we do see male victims, often it's in a same-sex relationship, and it's often another male perpetrator perpetrating against a male. But I do just want to acknowledge that is generally the language that we use because of the research. Oh. Wait, no, on too far. So safety action meetings, also shortened to SAMs. So I'll throw out SAM every now and then, if that's what that means. Safety action meetings are next one. Thank you. Well, this is hard, isn't it? Safety action meetings are a New South Wales government response, and it's the Safer Pathway program. Is the whole premise of it is to put support, to identify victim survivors and put the support in victim survivors and to hold perpetrators accountable for their actions. Sydney Local Health District have been participating in SAMs since 2016, so 8 years now. So it's not a new program, but it's a program that people often don't really hear about. And I guess part of the reason why people don't hear about it is because perpetrators aren't told about it, purely to keep victim survivors safe. So hopefully today I can tell you guys a little bit about it, if you haven't heard of it, if you're unfamiliar with it, so that you know what support might be out there for women when you're working with them and they disclose violence. So there were inquiries, we're talking a good 10 years ago now, as to why the rates of domestic violence were increasing. And one of the outcomes of those studies were that different government bodies were sitting with different information and holding different information, and they weren't exchanging it with each other. And women were dying, and there was inquiries done, and it came out that DCJ was sitting with this information, and health was sitting with this information, and police were sitting with this information. And if we were just able to exchange it, we actually would have been able to put more support in for people experiencing violence. So safety action meetings are a response to those inquiries. The accountability sits with all government agencies, but SAM just allows a space for us to be able to exchange information. So safety action meetings they're fortnightly meetings at the police station. They're held at the police station and they're chaired by the police. They're organised by the Women's Domestic Violence Court Advocacy Service, a really good service for you guys to know if you are concerned about someone experiencing violence. So the title sort of gives it away, but they only work with the women. And they are such an amazing service. They're statewide. Everyone will have access to aid service. They're also pretty good for workers who just aren't sure what to do in a situation. How serious is this? Do we need to be doing more? Is everything okay at the moment? Can we sit and monitor for a little bit longer? I can't speak highly enough of them. They also go to court, so they are often, well, they are always at court to support the victim survivors at court, because obviously that is an extremely daunting process. The WDV has the other part of SAMS, and they take the minutes, they organise, they put out the agendas, they basically run it with the police. So the other government agencies are New South Wales Police, New South Wales Education, New South Wales Health, DCJ, Child Protection, DCJ Housing, and New South Wales Corrections. Occasionally we might have refuge workers, NGOs might attend, and so there are obviously other people that are let in if they're talking about a specific case, but due to the high level of confidentiality, it's only they're the main players at the SAM. And what we do is we exchange information about victim survivors, children and perpetrators. And the whole aim is to increase safety for survivors and hold perpetrators. It's all done in a really sensitive manner. There's confidentiality agreements. We can't talk about what happens at these meetings outside unless we can do it under legislation, which we'll go to in a minute. And some matters are kept on the agenda for several meetings. Some are discussed once and taken off. some will be discussed at 6 meetings in a row. And the women and children and male victims that are referred have to be the top tier. They have to be the ones that are at serious threat. It's a serious threat of further harm or serious threat of dying. And how we assess that is through a few different ways. Our main method of assessing is through the Domestic Violence Safety Assessment Tool, shortened to the DVSAT. Also, professional judgment. So if someone is telling us something that we're really, really worried about, we can use our own professional judgment to advocate for them to be on the SAM. And the last one is her own perception of the violence. And if she's telling us that she's so unsafe, and she might be killed or might be seriously harmed or her children might be taken away, that is enough for us to ask for it to be put on the SAM as well. The majority of the SAM referrals come from police. So I would say probably 90% of the SAM referrals are from the police, but other government agencies and other non-government agencies can also refer to SAM. And just to mention the bulk, sometimes there will be 30 matters on a SAM agenda. So that's 30 instances of DV or a breach of an AVO in the last fortnight. And we talk about all of them. So the bulk is that there's a lot, and it's the frequency is increasing, unfortunately. Yes, so the question was, is it only serious threat? That is correct. They have to be assessed at serious threat. And I've got 2 case studies which I'll go through to give you an indication of what serious threat might look like. Not to play down any DV at all, but there are some high risk indicators which, if we tick some of those boxes, that indicates serious threat. So consent and privacy considerations. Privacy is massive in health. From a health point of view, privacy is massive. We don't go around telling people everything about everyone's medical issues, but we don't need consent to refer to SAM. So if someone is telling us, if a victim survivor says, I don't want my information shared, we can override that because she's been assessed as serious threat. If she's been assessed as serious threat, we can override it. Part 13A of the Crimes, the Domestic and Personal Violence Act was created. So there was a Part 13A that was added to the original Act to allow service providers to share information for the specific purpose of preventing or lessening a serious threat to a person's life, health or safety in the cases of domestic violence. So we don't like overriding someone's consent. We don't do it willy-nilly. We really talk about whether we need to or not, because as Viv mentioned, women are the best teller of their own story, and if they're begging us not to, we've really got to justify why we're going to do that. Best practice is to tell her that we're doing that, as long as it's safe to do so. So we're not doing that if the perpetrator's within earshot, or he might be tracking her phone and her phone is there, or he might walk into ED at any moment. So we're really thinking about safety for that, but we can override her consent. And we are never telling the perpetrator about SAM. So no one in the SAM is ever talking to the perpetrator, picking up a phone, calling him. The only way that he would find out about a SAM is if the victim's survivor tells him. Just to mention, sorry, that last slide, similar to your 16As, I'm sure people are generally familiar with 16A. 16A people are really generally quite confident with a no. 13A is less known. 16A is a little bit more lenient, to do with the safety, welfare, or well-being of a child. 13A has to be a serious threat for us to exchange about it. And we can exchange about perpetrator as well. So it's not just the victim survivor's information. We can call police if it's 13A and say, is there an AVO with this guy? What do I need to know about his history? Has he seriously hurt someone before? Has he taken the kids before? What do we need to know to keep this woman and children safe? So 13A is helpful for us as long as the victim survivor is assessed. So I've got 2 case examples, which I'll go through. So these were both discussed at the safety action meetings. And this will give you a bit of an indication of the high risk nature of the ones that we're hearing about at SAM. So this is a family violence example. So Jude's 79 years old. She lives in DCJ housing, and the perpetrator of the violence is her son, Michael, who's 54. He's male and he has no fixed address. Jude was brought to hospital with several broken ribs and delirium. Jude told the ambulance officers that Michael pushed her and then kicked her. However, she retracted this once she got to hospital and it was confirmed that she had broken ribs. She insisted she had a fall at home. Jude thinks that she'd been on the floor for several hours before the ambulance came. The medical team noticed old bruising on her arms and her shoulders, but Jude could not remember how she got them. The medical team also noted that Jude was quite frail and was very dehydrated. Michael is currently homeless due to rental arrears and stays at Jude's property about 5 times a week. And he has a diagnosis of schizophrenia and has a drug dependency. Jude is known to a home care provider. And when New South Wales Health spoke to the home care provider, they also shared the following information, the collateral. And we were able to do that because we were worried about her being a serious threat. So the home care provider told us the following. So when Judy went to the ATM with the care worker, there was $350 missing from her account. Judy agreed for Michael to be her power of attorney last year. And the paperwork was completed and was already signed by Michael. Michael often says he will do the grocery shopping, but there's limited food in the home. Michael has possession of Jude's bank cards and claims the carer's allowance through Centrelink. And Jude has spoken about misplacing things such as her watch and her cash that she had in her bedside drawer. She got a letter from the bank about a loan that she had, but she thought it was a scam because she doesn't have any loans, so she threw it out and didn't read it. The home care provider has also noticed TAB slips in the home on multiple occasions. And Jude is very defensive of Michael, but also seems to be quite fearful of him. And she says she doesn't want to rock the boat when suggested that the social worker has conversations with him. And Jude has mentioned that Michael owes people money. So Health made the referral to Sam because we were really worried about the intersection of potential gambling, but definitely confirmed financial abuse from Michael to his mother. And unfortunately, we do see this a lot in people that are over 65. We see the adult children taking advantage of them. It's easy to, blame missing jewelry or missing cash, or did she really have, maybe she got the, confusion around the ATM. It's easy for us to sometimes jump to those conclusions with our older population. So we really just need to be mindful of that when they are telling us things in terms of believing them. So the result from Sam in terms of what was able to be done. So the collaboration at SAM. So the social worker at the hospital provided some psychoeducation for Jude about family violence. The home care provider increased visits to daily to keep assessing. And the home care provider also spoke with the elder abuse line to get some advice around the worries around the financial abuse. Housing was going to assist Michael with more stable housing. So because he was homeless, he was in her house a lot. And if we could house him, give him a house somewhere, it meant that he was then out of the home. And so housing was able to increase, do the application, get him into temporary accommodation for a little bit until they could find him a permanent house. We advocated for it to be somewhere further away. And they moved him further away, but he was still quite close. The domestic violence liaison officers were going to speak with neighbours, but they were going to go to the neighbours and say, can you have a low threshold for calling the police? If you hear anything, can you please give us a buzz? They're also going to put an alert on their system that if they had a call out to that address, that they needed to go really urgently. And they were going to try and home visit Jude under the guise of something else. So the DVLOs that we work with at SAM are very skilled in domestic violence, and they were going to come up with a reason why they might need to talk to Jude. They are quite creative. Sometimes they will do a door knock and say, we need to talk to you about an incident that happened in the street last week, just to get in the door. They can check, how she's going, try and build a bit of a relationship with her, then she might trust them to talk to them. And WDV CAS were going to provide food vouchers for Jude because we knew that she was struggling with food. There wasn't much food in the home because we thought that that the perpetrator was gambling the money, and he was promising to fill up the fridge with food, and it was constantly empty. So that's an example. This one as well, we had the physical injuries with this one, and obviously Jude was 79, we were really about her physical safety as well as the gambling, the financial abuse. And in terms of our older population, we need to really be tuned into what medical issues they might have as well, because that really can impact their physical safety. It might be harder for them to get to a phone, might be harder for them to use a phone. We have a lot of people that have long lives, and that's what happened with this one in terms of the delirium. She wasn't actually sure how long she'd been on the ground for. So just considering, I guess, how well our victim survivors can access safety is really important as well. We have time to do one more. So this is an example of intimate partner violence. The victim survivor is Kayla. She is 31 years old, female, living in a family property that she inherited. So she didn't need to pay rent, which is, I guess, good context for the story. Luke was 42, male. He lives in DCJ housing, and Evie is a 6-year-old who lives with Kayla and attends school. And Luke is Evie's father. Kayla is known for staying home leading violence, another amazing service. If anyone wants to write that one down, just to detour a little bit, they will work with women when the perpetrator is not in the home, and they have a lot of brokerage for things like changing locks, putting cameras in, giving personal alarms. They also do a lot of case management, so they're a really good service if you've got someone that's experiencing violence. There was a 5-year history of violence perpetrated by Luke, an exclusionary AVO in place to protect Kayla and Evie. And 2 weeks ago, Luke went to prison for breaching the AVO. Kayla developed a gambling problem when she would go to the local RSL to escape the violence. They're really similar things to the study that Viv was just chatting about. Kayla has now started a new relationship with Mark, who she met at the RSL. And Mark has a history of serious physical assault of a previous partner and served 3 years jail time for that. So this one has some interesting themes as well, in terms of Kayla's vulnerability. Here we go. Kayla's vulnerability, she had a background of childhood trauma. She was very high functioning. She had a corporate job, and she was a single parent to Evie, so she was doing everything on her own. The breach of the AVO, which is the one that sent Luke back to prison, was for its to kill if she starts a new relationship. And they were sent via a text message from Luke's brother. So he didn't say that himself, but he got a third party to do that, and that is still a breach of the AVO. The history of the violence includes sexual violence, stalking, including tracking on mobile phone, intimidation of throwing items around the home. So he never physically hurt. When I say physically hurt, sexual violence, obviously physical violence as well, but Kayla and Evie never had injuries, but he would scare them. So he would throw things around the home, smash things. There was never any physical sign on them that they were being hurt. Verbal abuse, including name calling and systems abuse. So bringing her to hospital saying that she was suicidal and an unfit mother and she couldn't care for Evie. The RSL, again, similar things to what we've talked about. The RSL, Kayla was worried about what Evie was being exposed to at home, and so she felt that the RSL was a safe place to go. The RSL had a creche for Evie. And Kayla knew that they would bring her food and drinks and that Evie would be fed in the creche. She also knew that the RSL had security, which was a big thing for her in case she did need help. And she formed relationships at the RSL, which is one of how she met Mark. So Kayla had debts up to $12,000 and she had a lot of gambling shame. And so she created isolation from her friendship groups because they would ask her out to do things and she couldn't justify spending the money. And she didn't feel safe enough to leave Evie with someone else because she was worried about Luke coming or sending someone else to come and get Evie. In terms of Mark, we were worried about Mark because of his previous assault on a physical partner, but also worried about him preying on Kayla in terms of being a vulnerable person. And Kayla had already lent Mark money to buy himself a car. So he'd already taken advantage of her. So the collaboration at SAM, so police provided a copy of the AVO to the school. The social worker at the hospital provided, DCJ, we're going to offer a referral to Brighter Futures. WDB CAS were going to make a referral to DV Counselling Service at RPA. So RPA has its own DV Counselling Service. So they were going to make a referral to us to do some counselling with Kayla. Corrections, we're going to monitor Luke's phone calls from prison to monitor for future breaches of AVO. So we see loads of breaches from prison, loads. Either the perpetrator calling the victim, survivor, or calling family, and then them linking them up, or using another inmate's credit to, so it looks like it's coming from another person to the victim survivor. They're extremely creative. And so once we know that all this is happening, it means correctives can do a deep dive on the phone calls that are being made, and they can listen to them as well. So they can pick up threats. They can block numbers, they can do lots of things. Staying home, leaving violence, we're going to offer gambling support to Kayla, and we're going to keep doing psychoeducation around the violence, read her new partner Mark. We were worried now that Mark would now become a perpetrator and she would now be a serious threat from Mark. The DVLOs were going to call Kayla to check in with her and see if she needed any support. Again, try and build a relationship with her. The decisions that are made at SAM and the actions that we come up with are not, if Kayla doesn't want anything, she doesn't have to do anything. It's all things that are offered to her. She's in control. She's told what was discussed at SAM. She's told around the action plan and she doesn't need to do anything she doesn't want to do. So a lot of the time it's DVLOs reaching out and saying, hey, we're here. We know what's going on. If you want to come and talk to us at any point, you can. So these are just the takeaways, the main things that we see at SAM in terms of gambling. So coping strategy to deal with trauma. So examples for getting what's going on at home, a little bit like what Kayla was doing. Trying to find some financial control because then it allowed regular access to finances. Example, if I just have one big win, then maybe I can leave. I have enough money to find it. Then use as a physical place of safety. The basic needs are met. So there's air conditioning, there's access to food and drinks. Social interactions with people who don't know what's going on at home. You know, you're a bit anonymous in there. The people that wouldn't necessarily have a judgment over you. Deliberately introducing gambling to the victim survivor and then using it against them. Not trusting the victim survivor with finances due to debts or gambling, and that is why he has to control the finances. Easier for her to stay with him than leave and inherit debt. So it's easier if I stay. If I leave, I'm now going to have to repay the debt that he's created. I may as well just stay. Using family's money to support gambling or pay off debts. That's our adult children perpetrating against their parents. And loans in other people's names or creating debts in her name. Unfortunately, these are really common themes from SAM. Last slide. So questions to ask victim survivors to help assess whether there's financial abuse going on, coercive control, any gambling. So does anyone deny you access to your money? Are you able to spend money when you want to? Are you accountable to anyone for what money you spend? Do you have to explain to anyone what that means on your credit card? Do you have to explain to someone why you need $10 today? What would happen if you spend money that you aren't allowed to? And we see women all the time, we call them acts of resistance, doing tiny things to keep themselves safe. And what would happen if you spent money that you weren't allowed to? I guess what we want, the next question for that would be, is that then correct, making you more unsafe? So are you at more risk by spending money, or are you at risk by not spending money? Because it could work both ways. Have you been forced to sign a POA, so power of attorney or guardianship, to give your rights to someone else? Have you ever been refused money for basic needs or shared costs, for example, food, rent, medical bills, things like that, prescription medication? Does money go missing, or are you worried you've been financially scammed? Or are there loans or credit cards with your name on them which aren't yours? Does someone take your income or your allowances or ask you for money? And have you ever been forced to choose between basic needs for you and your children? For example, is a mother going without food for herself so that she can give excursion money? Going to hand over. Any questions before yes? Now or now? Great. Okay. Who wants to go first? Yes. Hi.
In relation to the
in terms of purely financial abuse, probably not at SAM, would be referring out. So either to a seniors' rights service. A lot of the time it's psychoeducation, so they often need case management. For health, we have an outpatient community team that will go out to people over 65. And so I guess from a health point of view, we'd engage them. And it's generally around the psychoeducation and undoing what's been done. So for example, that one, the power of attorney or the guardianship, would be linking them up with legal advice to say, actually, I don't want this anymore. If she decided that that's what she wanted. And so a lot of the time we're making referrals to services that are specifically for that need.
Really helpful. I'm conscious that at GambleAware, whether we are aware of it or not, a lot of the time we're looking at and I was wondering around not polluting the table.
It's really tricky state. I love curious questioning. So I'm just trying to understand a little bit more, or can you tell me a little bit more about what so-and-so's reaction might be, or so we're information gathering and we're not challenging directly because we know that challenging directly, red flags will go off. So we're trying to gather information, but at the same time, gently challenge. But it's a really tricky space. And personally, I'm not skilled in it. I think it's around maybe consulting with someone that is skilled in working with perpetrators in the DV space, because it's such a fine line of not making them more unsafe. But I think that curious questioning and seeing something from someone else's point of view, what do you think that might be like for the children, or what do you think that might be like for your partner? That can then give you a little bit more insight in terms of the risk, what level of risk we're sitting at.
One more.
There's a
Give my question.
Okay. Anyone pressing right now? Yeah. Not much gaming. We don't see much gaming. Occasionally we'll get young people, when I say young people, 16 to 18, listed as the perpetrator, perpetrating against their parents. And that's probably when we see it a lot, that they're sitting in their room gaming. And when parents try to, you know, put a stop to that, or it's bedtime now, or why don't you come out for dinner, things escalate and then the violence happens. That's probably the main, it's generally with young people. I can't say that any ring a bell for adult perpetrators. And we do have DCJ at SENS, which often they bring the child perspective for that.
I also like to acknowledge the land on which we are, the Darug land, which is unceded lands, and acknowledge the teachings that Aboriginal people can bring to us in their lived experience in domestic violence and the impacts of gambling harm on themselves. Yeah. Okay. Very slow. Okay, so Wash House was born out of the vision of and dedication and lobbying of a small group of local women and workers from Essing's Women's Refuge. These extraordinary women identified unmet support needs of the rapidly growing number of women escaping domestic violence, being relocated to public housing in the Mount Druitt area. The WASH is a community-based resource centre for women in the Blacktown LGA, operating for over 40 years. Our mission is to reduce the impacts of poverty, social disadvantage and violence on the lives of women and girls. Our current program that we have available to the women that come to the WASH is including the SHLD program, redress, counselling, case management, gambling awareness, and grief support programs. On average, every day, we support 30 to 40 women across all programs, over the phone, in person, walk-ins, and through some of our group activities. So today, I will be discussing. I didn't expect it to come up like this. Discussing a brief overview of what the Wash House is with the women that we support and how women are experiencing financial abuse in all the forms, with or without gambling. I will also cover how domestic violence impacts finances, financial literacy after domestic violence, gambling harm, and the barriers of accepting support. I will also share a client story from a woman who is experiencing financial abuse as part of a domestic violence lived story. Okay, so often women are experiencing many different forms of financial abuse. We have seen women who, up until the DV relationship has ended, could have been highly successful, could also have been even before the relationship, being highly successful women and fully independent in every way, including financially stable and financially literate. Or the women who were taught to rely on others for all support from childhood. Many women have had a little to no control over the finances of the household. This can look like being forced to have zero independence from not working and solely looking after the home, or being solely responsible for caring for the home and children. Some women, it has been several years since they last ever saw a bill, set a budget themselves. Some women are also experiencing being cut off financially as a form of punishment if not being cooperative to the partner's demands. Whilst in the midst of leaving the relationship, the lack of access to finances can often be what holds women back from leaving. Systemic barriers like access to government support and even having access to government support, the women amount of value available is not enough to support a family starting over again, from the point of nothing can deter women from leaving a relationship. It's often at this point that women are discovering for the first time their partners has run up several debts in her name, due to gambling debts, thus making it impossible for her to get a bank loan to help her start over. Abusive partners are often told if she leaves, he will not financially support the children, or he will stop paying housing obligations that her name is attached to. Immediately after leaving a relationship, a common experience of the women we see at the wash house is ex-partner is still holding her to ransom using financial abuse through methods of like cutting her access to any joint accounts, forcing long drawn out court case process for the closure on a family home and child supports, or closing financial debts she has taken out against assets in her name. Further down the track, long after escaping from the abusive relationship, women are often still facing large debts due to the cost involved in starting all over again, especially if they left with nothing but what they have packed in a bag and flee. Some women may turn to gambling themselves with false ideas that a big win is all she needs to be in the clear. There is also a lack of ability to navigate the systems in place to access financial resources for a wide range of reasons, including the trauma that stays with women who have experienced domestic violence. Okay. Many cases we see examples of where the ex-partner has controlled the ability for the woman to earn an income for herself, or he has taken from her all the earnings that she has earned for the good of the home, and she will just spend it on things the family doesn't need. Other factors that impact a woman's understanding of balancing budgets is that it could have been years since she last balanced a budget, or may have never had to. This is especially significant with the cost of living in its current state it is. We've seen cases where previously to the relationship that the woman has actually been the higher income earner, has been the person that has actually come to the relationship with a large amount of money in the bank, has been able to actually financially support herself for many years, and then she then now has stopped working due to children, and then has all of her, he's taken all of her money in her account to pay off his debts that were actually accrued before even the relationship. And then years later, she's never actually seen the electricity bill, paid the rent, has been the one that's been paying the childcare fees or anything, and suddenly there's $1,000 in the electricity account and never worked out that that's actually how much things would cost. Many cases we see. Yeah, we also see in many cases example of the mental health and the well-being of children, the woman is always impacted by domestic violence. It's also important to note that many of these women are experiencing PTSD, which can result in brain fog and impaired decision making. This adds another layer of difficulty, as systems often require them to attend multiple appointments and complete paperwork, which can feel overwhelming. Even basic tasks like contacting the bank or opening a new account can become too much during this stressful time. After leaving a DV situation, women need significant support to understand how to manage and balance finances. Many struggle with budgeting, handling debts, and understanding credit. We've also seen cases where ex-partners have sabotaged financial independence by running debts in the woman's name and withholding access to financial accounts. Many women assume that after leaving a relationship, the ex-partner's gambling no longer affects them. However, the reality is that gambling is often leaves them in a financial ruin, multiple debts, bad credit, and ongoing financial struggles. Some women are dealing with debts their ex-partner accumulated in their name, or the financial consequences of gambling may limit their ability to secure housing, loans or other financial resources. Additionally, some women may turn to gambling themselves as an escape, further compounding the financial instability. Many women face significant barriers when it comes to accepting support. These include a lack of awareness of about what services are available and a limited understanding of the systems they now must navigate. Many women do not report their experiences, leading to the traumatization of having to repeat their story multiple times to different service providers. This process can be incredibly disheartening, especially when they face potential stereotypes or skepticism about their experiences because they do not report their abuse previously. Additionally, the overwhelming nature of their situation, combined with fear of judgment or distrust in previous experiences, can discourage them from seeking the help that they need. So next, I'm going to give you a bit of a case study. This is a client that is currently with one of our counsellors, and some of the information that she has shared. And then I'll give just a brief outline of what we're actually doing to support her currently. So Donna experienced a lot of traumas in her childhood. She did not feel worthy as a child as her parents had their own issues and had no time to meet the needs of a child. She was taught that to have value, you needed to have money. She met her husband, and the first thing that attracted her to him was his fancy car and nice home. She worked full time and had money on her own. He convinced her to buy a property, and he contributed to the mortgage payments. He gave her $1,500 a week to spend on whatever she needed. She was proud of how her life presents to the outside world. All this comes at a cost. He controls everything she does, demands sex, and if she refuses, he refuses her. He never tells her where he is or when he will be coming home. She needs to be at home, or as he will show up at any time. He criticizes her parenting skills and the way she looks after the home. She was offered her dream job, but he convinced her not to take it. He would not help look after their son. She said it was easy to do what he said, and as the consequences would have been too great. The abuse is escalating, and she wants to leave but has no money. She has reported the abuse to the police, and there is an AVO in place now. They can still live together. As a punishment to her, he stopped paying the mortgage, and he no longer gives her any money. She has gone to Sentiment to get assistance, but she said that she cannot survive financially on what they are offering her, and does not want to leave her comfortable home. She has a son with special needs and does not want him to be deprived of anything that he needs. She feels trapped. It is also during the recent months that she has discovered he's been gambling the entire time of their relationship. So currently we're just giving her advice on how she can protect herself within the home. A safety plan is in place for her and her son. And she's also been given the ability to meet with our FHLB team when it is time that she is ready to leave. We're also linking her with different services that in the area that she can safely seek support from without the need for her husband to know about what is happening. So then there is also psychoeducation on what is actually happening for her, and also the risk to her and her son. Thank you.
Any questions immediately? Or now, otherwise we will keep this for the panel discussion. Expand. No. Okay. Well, firstly, I want to say a massive thanks again to our presenters. We're going to now break for about 15 to 20 minutes, so it gives you a chance to snack, drink, network, stretch. They will, so look at the time now. Maybe like a few minutes after it hits 4 o'clock. Also, as you're coming back, we might be handing out a survey for you to start filling out. I know when the event's finished, we're all going to go, so we can use this break time now to also get a little bit of your thoughts on how today has and is going, very much appreciated. So we will be hounding you around, just look out for him. Otherwise,